Thank you so much, Sierra, and good afternoon, everyone. We're so thrilled to have you on and to have this really important conversation. So I'll be your moderator today. I just want to give a few brief remarks before I go ahead and introduce our guests and get the conversation started. So today, as you saw from our title, we want to get laser focused on the gaps in access, opportunity, and achievement between different groups of students in our country. Why? For several reasons. For one, every student should get the same access and opportunity to an excellent education, and we should not see any gaps when it comes to these factors. Second, many achievement gaps between lower income students and their more affluent peers, between English language learner students and their native English speaking peers, and other student subgroups remain too stubbornly wide. And in a recent webinar we hosted that maybe you attended on the results of the Education Recovery Scorecard, which looked at reading and math scores of elementary and middle school students from last school year, we celebrated larger than expected gains overall, but also lamented the fact that at the same time, the academic achievement gap has only widened between students from economically challenged families and their more well-off peers. So we are compelled to focus laser-like on these gaps, and we're excited to bring you that conversation today with a stellar lineup of speakers. We are grateful that three wonderful superintendents agreed to return in the midst of closing out their school year, especially, as well as another fantastic superintendent and two field-blazing community partners from Philadelphia and Birmingham. All of our guests today will share about their district and city and the biggest gaps in access, opportunity, achievement they face, and how they're tackling these gaps and promising results they're seeing that you can all learn from and take back to your communities. And I also want to say that, of course, in the next 90 minutes, we're not going to solve the achievement gap challenge, but let this be an invitation to learn more about what's working and what still needs to be done to take that into the next conversation and the next round of work we do. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest today. So starting with Dr. Adrienne Battle, EDD, Superintendent, Metro Nashville Public Schools, Tennessee. Dr. Battle has spent almost her entire career at the school district, having served as a teacher and in various school and district leadership roles. Next, we have Jenny Bagoni, Executive Director of Read by Fourth, and Interim Senior Director for External Relations and Strategic Engagement with the Free Library of Philadelphia Foundation. Before her current roles, Ms. Bagoni led a national nonprofit that provides life-changing apprenticeships to youth from disadvantaged communities and served as Vice President of the Philadelphia Youth Network. Next, we have Dontrell Young Foster, President and CEO with the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District in Alabama. Ms. Young Foster has worked at the Housing Authority for over 20 years, so she knows her community well, and serves on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Greater Birmingham. Next, we have Dr. Nerese Price, EDD, Superintendent of Baldwin County Schools, Georgia. And approaching 10 years as Superintendent of Baldwin County Schools, Dr. Price was the 2022 Georgia Superintendent of the Year and previously held roles as Deputy Superintendent of the Clark County School District and as teacher and principal in different states. Next, we have Dr. Mark A. Sullivan, EDD, Superintendent with Birmingham City Schools, Alabama. Dr. Sullivan has spent his entire career with Birmingham City Schools and is a veteran of the U.S. Naval Reserves. And last but not least, Dr. Tony Watlington, Senior, EDD, Superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia. And prior to joining the School District of Philadelphia, Dr. Watlington served as Superintendent of the Rowan Salisbury Schools in North Carolina. So a great lineup of speakers for you today. We're excited to dive in. So Dr. Battle, I'm going to start with you because I know you need to leave us at 3:30 Eastern. So we're excited to dig into your work. Thank you again so much for returning to join us. And I'd just like to turn it over to you to share a little bit about your district demographics, some achievement gaps you're focusing on, and some strategies you're using to tackle those. So I'll turn it over to you. And thank you again so much.
Well, thank you so much, Mary, and to the entire team for the invitation to be a part of this webinar, and to all of my colleagues who everyone will have the pleasure of hearing from in just a few moments. Again, I'm Adrienne Battle. I serve as the Director of Schools or Superintendent for Metro Nashville Public Schools in Nashville, Tennessee. So as we advance to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about who we are in MNPS. We are a school district that serves over 80,000 students here in Nashville, Tennessee. We serve about 159 schools that ranges from a early childhood, early learning centers, all the way through our post-secondary handoff experience in high school, so a very robust portfolio of school options here in Metro Nashville Public Schools. We collaborate with over 11,000 leaders within our district, with approximately 5,000 of those leaders serving as classroom teachers. And again, speaking to our diversity, we have approximately 126 languages spoken across our entire district. So we're really proud of the diversity of our school and to serve so many students in a large urban school district. Next slide, please. So as we kind of set the context around who we are as a school district and how we've been going about solving for the achievement gaps that have really persist here in Nashville and across the country, the first thing I want to kind of reference back to is what was talked about in the opening, and that is the Education Recovery Scorecard. So Metro Nashville Public Schools, as a part of this reporting, was ranked in third in the top 100 districts in math growth from 22 to 23, sixth among the top 100 districts in reading growth from 22 to 23. But MNPS was just one of two large urban districts that ranked in the top 10 for both math and reading growth, which we're extremely proud of, because as we know, as we continue to pull on the levers of student growth and achievement, sometimes you can overcorrect. And so we're really grateful for the opportunity to grow students across the board in both math and reading. So we're coming off of celebrating those achievements, but the reality is that our achievement gaps still exist. While we're not a school district that experience those gaps widening, this slide kind of gives you a context of what's happening in Metro Nashville Public Schools. So as we think about our achievement gaps, we are still laser focused around the achievement gaps that do persist for our Black, Hispanic, Latino students, our economically disadvantaged, our students with disabilities, and our limited English proficient students. Now, what we know is that they all showed more growth than the Tennessee average in math in 2022, and all but one of those groups continued to do that in 2023. So we have this challenge of all of our student groups growing. But at the same time, all groups grew in proficiency rate. None of those groups grew as much as our all student group, our white students, or our Asian students. So again, we're seeing growth across all student groups, but we don't see the acceleration yet in order to close those achievement gaps. Likewise, according to our value-added system here in Tennessee, our Black, Hispanic, Latino, ED, and LEP students also exceeded the state average growth in grades 3 through 8 English language arts for 2022 and 23, with our students with disabilities actually exceeding state growth in 2022 and matching it in 2023. However, while each group grew in proficiency levels in grades 3 through 8, none grew as fast as the all white or Asian student groups. And we saw a very similar trend in our high school students, particularly around English 2. We are proud and celebrating the early victory and success that our scores have returned to pre-pandemic levels for all of our students, including our economically disadvantaged Black, Hispanic, Latino student groups, but gaps persist in overall proficiency levels. So there's just some of the context of what's happening here in Nashville. And as I think about how we're trying to address those gaps, again, that are decades long and being a part of our narrative of what's happening, we are really turning to and leveraging our multi-tier system of support. And many of us in the education world refer to that as MTSS. Here in Nashville, we're using an integrated model for MTSS that focuses on both the academic and behavioral and social emotional learning needs of our students. So our framework ensures that appropriate academic, behavioral, and SEL supports are in place for every student, leveraging a very robust data-based decision-making. So as you can see with our MTSS model, starting with Tier 1 instruction, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes, we're increasing the intensity of those supports, given where our gaps continue to persist as a district, and not only with the student groups, but in a very personalized way. So as we advance to the next slide, I just want to help you visualize what's happening here in Nashville. In the very center of this slide, you see our core tenets. And in the very bottom right-hand corner, you see that one of our core tenets as a district is to identify and eliminate inequities. Outside of those core tenets, you see our focus outcomes. We're extremely clear about the measures and the progress we want to realize for all of our students regarding literacy, numeracy, SEL, and transitions. And on the outside of that, you see our signature initiatives. And the reason I share this slide is because as a practicing educator for almost 20 years now, sometimes where I found myself and my teammates falling short is not articulating how we're planning to both grow students, help students achieve at high levels, and to close achievement gaps. And so I'm just going to take a few minutes and unpack a few of these signature initiatives and how that plays out in MNPS. First and foremost, our mantra in Metro Schools is every student known. It is our belief that when you're talking about achievement gaps, you cannot just sit at the district level. And quite frankly, you cannot just sit at the student group level. You have to drill down to the needs of every individual student because every student is unique. Every student has their own aspirations and talents, and it's our responsibility to deliver on our promise of providing that high quality public educational experience that prepares students for life and for their post-secondary experiences after they graduate. So what you see here is an example of individual student goals. So we've broken these down by grade bands of what's expected for every student, given the grade level that the student is in. So this is just an example of the grade band. And what we do is break this down to every individual student. So on your left, you see grades pre-K through 4. On your right, you see grade 5. As you advance to the next slide, you'll see grade band 6 through 8 on your left, grades 9 through 10 on your right. So you see some consistency in those focus outcomes, but they do change based upon the age and grade of the student. And on the last slide here, you'll see our focus outcomes that are articulated for our 11th through 12th graders. So that is one way we're trying to build our structures and systems to really get at these gaps that have persisted. Now, one way we've done that as we've moved to operationalize that is we've launched what we call a personalized student dashboard. The purpose of this personalized student dashboard, as you move to the next slide, is really to provide students and families and our educators with direct on-demand access to current student assessment results, their behavior data, their attendance records, and course grades, because we want to be very transparent about what's happening, where those gaps exist, and where those unique opportunities are for every individual student. So on the next slide, you see a quick snapshot. This is just the first page of the personalized dashboard that puts these visuals into play for our entire system. And I'll be honest with you, this took a lot of work. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But we also engage with our families and our students to make sure that the visuals that we were representing were user-friendly, that they could actually engage with it, see where their student was towards making the progress towards the focused outcomes that we have for our students. Next slide, please. So the data speaks. We launched this back in 2022. So from 2022 to 2023, we had an increase over 282% usage. So you can see that this is the dashboard that we leverage every single day. Next slide, please. Now, I'm sure all of my colleagues are going to talk about the importance of Tier 1 instruction. That is just something that has to be a part of the formula of addressing these very resistant gaps that exist. In Metro Nashville, we happen to call them Literacy Reimagined and Math to the Nth, Literacy and Numeracy Tier 1 instruction, more generally coined. As you move to the next slide, this is really just about providing standardized Tier 1 high quality curriculum, instruction with proper high quality instructional materials to deliver equitable learning outcomes across all schools. So making sure that every student, every educator has access to high quality instructional materials to give those access points for every student, regardless of their background. Next slide, please. And then I just want to take a moment and talk about accelerating scholars. This is our version of high dosage tutoring. As you move to the next slide, this is our high impact tutoring offered during or after school, mostly during the school day, where students are receiving 3 sessions, 30 minutes throughout the week to proactively address student needs. So this has to be coupled with high quality tier 1 instruction. But what we're seeing as you move to the next slide is that the proof is in the pudding, it's in the data. Our accelerating scholars tutoring was most effective with students with lower baseline levels of achievement. And we're seeing that students who consistently participate in high dosage tutoring begin to outpace in growth their peers. And so we're really excited about this strategy being coupled with our tier 1 instruction. And then lastly, on this next slide, if you can advance for me, please. There are some key takeaways. I won't spend a lot of time here. This is going to be consistent of what you'll hear across the country when you stand up a gold standard tutoring model. But on the next slide, as you move forward, I just want to highlight our equity roadmap. We are really clear in our purpose of our equity roadmap that we want to operationalize what it means to be equity centered in everything that you do. So next slide, please. You'll kind of see a highlight of our purpose of the equity roadmap. It is to operationalize the district's commitment to racial equity. Again, this is where we're seeing a lot of those achievement gaps here in Nashville. And then on the next slide, you'll see one of our intended outcomes is to reduce achievement gaps among targeted student groups within all district focused outcomes. And so we use that equity roadmap to make informed decisions about the research-based strategies we deploy to really get at this tough data point to move. And I'll close on my last slide by saying this. You're going to hear from some amazing community partners in just a moment. Schools and school districts cannot and should not do this work alone. Next slide, please. So I encourage community partnerships, business leaders, just the community wrapping around our schools to make sure that our school districts can start to move this needle in closing the achievement gap. This is just a snapshot of one article that highlighted a partnership in Metro Nashville Public Schools with community in schools in fighting our chronic absenteeism post-pandemic. So that is just a little snapshot of what's happening in Nashville. And I look forward to hearing more from our colleagues and partners across the country around how they're really getting at closing these achievement gaps that we know have persisted for a very long time. Thank you.
Dr. Battle, thank you so much. That was amazing how you were able to do that in about 10 minutes to cover all of that. So thank you so much. We have you for about 10 more minutes before you have to drop off. I'm going to ask you 2 quick questions from the audience, and then for other superintendents, Dr. Sullivan, Watlington, and Price, I'm going to tee you up to ask or share a 30-second reflection or question with Dr. Battle, so we can see a little bit of peer interaction there, something that you, an insight or a question. So 2 quick questions for you, Dr. Battle. The first was, if you can very briefly explain how you came to create that student data dashboard. And then for anyone else who's looking to do something similar for their district. And then the question about, have you or are you looking to include out-of-school partners into that ecosystem of student supports, including data sharing access to the dashboard? And I know that has like student sharing challenges, but we'll start with those 2 questions first.
Yeah, so when I think about standing up something like a personalized student dashboard, I'll be very transparent and share that it was a huge undertaking for us as a school district. When we first started on this journey, our team went out and kind of looked at what was happening all across the country to see if we could, quite frankly, just partner with someone to make this a real tool for Metro Nashville Public Schools. And we quickly realized, because of the uniqueness of what we were trying to accomplish with our focused outcomes and creating a 2-way communication tool with the dashboard, that we were going to have to leverage the excellent leaders that already were serving in MNPS. And so we ended up turning to our instructional technology team, our tech team, and our research assessment and evaluation team to cross collaborate and to take kind of the end goal of what we were trying to develop here in our district and create it. What was most important for me in doing this was making sure that this was kind of a one-stop shop, that we had one student management system where parents didn't have to have multiple logins and passwords. And so we wanted to integrate all of our systems and, to be quite frank, make sure all of our data systems really spoke into the personalized student dashboard. And so it took a lot of expertise. It took a lot of patience and time. We had various phases throughout the process, including focus groups with students and parents and educators, to make sure we were building something that was usable. I mean, it was such an investment in time and talent, in resources, that we wanted to make sure the end product was actually something that was user-friendly, accessible to everyone. And we see the data points and the numbers. And so my experience has been as a 20-year educator, that the more you drill down to the individual student level, the more success we will find at both growing students and making sure that they're achieving at higher levels.
Yeah, I just want to underscore something you just said, Dr. Battle, because we talked about this at our planning call where, we're talking about achievement gaps and we're talking about subgroups of students. But what you're saying is it's not good enough to just look at subgroups, because every student within that subgroup is unique and has unique challenges and strengths. And so something like a data dashboard allows you to drill down into that level. So thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Sullivan, I saw you had unmuted, so please share any quick reflection or question you have for Dr. Battle, and then I'll ask our other two superintendents too.
So Mary, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk a little bit about the things that are happening in Birmingham City Schools. But for Dr. Battle, I know that oftentimes it is very difficult for mindsets to change around Tier 1 instruction. We here in Birmingham, and I would assume in Nashville as well, there's this belief that we start with remediations. And, in fact, there was a time where people would say that we had an inverted pyramid. And so what happens is, as you know, that the expectation for student learning gets lowered, and bringing everybody up to Tier 1 instruction, ensuring that students are exposed to curriculum that they're going to be tested on. Can you talk a little bit about how you changed that mindset in Nashville?
Yeah, it's not change management is very, very difficult, and you've got to be willing to lead through it. Part of our adoption process, we really lean on our educators to help inform where we go. Part of that was the launching of our equity roadmap, quite frankly, that helped us build some of the conditions and have the conversations that are not always easy, can be tough sometimes to level set around what we mean around Tier 1 instruction. I mean, here's one of the examples I've shared that I know rings true in various ways across the country. No longer can we accept the practice of, being on one part of town, one thing is happening in our schools, and you go across to the other side of town, and there's a very different experience. And so being able to level set around a Tier 1 instructional model we had a sense of urgency around that, because what we were doing was not working for our students. And whenever you adopt a mantra like every student known, you've got to match your strategies, you've got to match your instructional materials to realizing, every student being known and not just their names, just this meaning where they are and meeting them where they are. And you're absolutely right, Dr. Sullivan, you're not going to intervene your way towards success. The goal here and the formula is to make sure that every student every day has access to high quality Tier 1 instruction. And that does include the professional learning of our educators. That was one of the change management strategies we leveraged. We're leveling the playing field. We're going to be more rigorous in the way in which we approach Tier 1 instruction. But guess what? We're going to support our educators. We're going to make sure you have the tools, the resources, and the supports necessary to deliver on their promise every day in each and every classroom.
Thank you, Dr. Battle. And I think we have a few more minutes for you to respond. So Dr. Watlington and Dr. Price, if you want to pair your questions or thoughts together, and then we can invite Dr. Battle to quickly respond.
Okay, great. I can be really quick. Good to see you, Dr. Battle. When I was in North Carolina, I had the good fortune to participate in a webinar in the height of the pandemic with Dr. Battle. So I've been following her work for some time.
Likewise.
Just want to underscore your point about you and Dr. Sullivan's point about the importance of Tier 1 instruction. We cannot remediate our way to excellence. And then we like to say that here in the School District of Philadelphia. I also thought it was very poignant that you got right into the chronic absenteeism. You made the point quite strongly, Dr. Battle, that we absolutely should not and cannot do this work alone. One of the partners we've reached out to here in Philadelphia is the Philadelphia Housing Authority, and we prepared a data sharing agreement. I wondered if there's any particular partner in Metro Nashville that you could highlight for us that we might want to consider as well.
Yes, and I mean one of the partners who was highlighting that article is Communities in Schools. This is specific to chronic absenteeism. We have a data sharing agreement. We cohort our students so that we can actually track to see if the strategies and the partnership opportunities are actually reducing chronic absenteeism and having students actually be engaged in the learning environment. And so part of that article really speaks to the significant increase in reducing chronic absenteeism. And if I had like 30 more minutes, I could show those on the webinar what's transforming in academic outcomes in those particular schools. And so there is a direct connection there. We do have various MOUs and data sharing agreements that are housed in our personalized student dashboards. That's in our next phase of the dashboard, where you can, every kind of intervention, if you will, or support that's provided to students will be a part and visual on that dashboard, so that we can track student success. And at the end of the day, and I know my superintendent colleagues know the importance of this, so that we can establish the evaluation data that speaks to the return on investment in the partnerships that exist all across our districts.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Battle, thank you so much. I know you need to run, but you've left us with a lot of inspiration and things to learn from. And we look forward to staying in touch with you and supporting your work. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so Dr. Price, we're going to head to you now. So we're going to go a little south from Nashville, Tennessee to Baldwin County, Georgia. And Dr. Price is going to, we're thrilled to have her on. She's approaching her 10-year anniversary as superintendent in Baldwin County Schools, to share with us a little bit about her district, which is a more rural district compared to our other districts on here, and how she's identifying and tackling gaps as well in her district. So Dr. Price, thank you so much for joining us.
Right. Thank you so much for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. And I am the superintendent of the Baldwin County School District, and I'm going to talk about specifically our initiative when it comes to literacy for all and narrowing that academic achievement gaps that we have all experienced post-pandemic. So if you will go to the next slide, please. So Baldwin County is in middle Georgia. It is about 2 hours south of Atlanta. We have approximately 43,000 residents, so it's rural Georgia. You can see the makeup of our community with 52% Caucasian and 42% African American. You can see around 3% Hispanic and 3% other. 42% of the population that lives in Baldwin County lives in poverty, compared to 28% in the state of Georgia. And 39% of the population between the ages of 5 and 17 in my community live in poverty. And you compare that to the state, which is only 24%. And it's hard to believe that in this great country, we still have people that go hungry. So 26% of my population suffers from food insecurity in our community. Next slide. So I also wanted to share with you that the major economic engine in our community is higher education, healthcare, the food service industry, and you can see more small businesses and service occupations. Baldwin County, the school district, is the 3rd largest employer in Baldwin County. And you can see from the data that 85% of our citizens 25 or older have a high school diploma, and 23% have a bachelor's degree. Next slide. The other interesting fact about our community is that we used to be the state capital. Milledgeville was the state capital of Georgia. And so that was back in 1804. And we were incorporated into a town. And then in 1868, the capital was moved to Atlanta. We also are known by having the largest mental institution in the world. It is closed now. There are only a couple of patients, but that's one of the interesting facts about our community. And also, we were the home of Flannery O'Connor. She lived in Milledgeville, and actually her farm is now a museum that is run by Georgia College. So that brings us to our school district, and you can see our demographics. Not as closely aligned to the demographics for the community. We are a majority minority school district. 85% of our students are eligible for free or reduced price meals. You can see our special ed population is 12%. ESL population is 2%, and our homeless population is 4%. So we have a number of families that are living in hotels due to a lack of affordable housing in our community. This is our school board. We have 5 school board members. They have gotten lots and lots of recognitions and accolades for exhibiting exemplary board governance. And 4 out of the 5 board members that hire me are still on the board. So they have been reelected multiple times, which I think speaks to the trust that the community has in them and in the work that we're doing in our school district. Next slide. Our mission, I just highlighted a couple of words because we believe that we cannot do the work of educating our children unless we do it in collaboration with our families and the community. And we want our students to graduate college and career ready so they can be contributing members of our local and global communities. And then our vision is to empower them to achieve to their maximum potential so they can have lifelong success. Next slide. And we have our strategic plan. This is a very out-of-the-box thinking strategic plan because we partner with Ford Next Generation Learning, the Development Authority of Baldwin County in Milledgeville, and the Technical College System of Georgia. And we created this strategic plan in order to prepare the next generation, focusing on engaging and applying learning to the real world, preparing our students for success in college and career, and also equipping them with 21st century skills. So we have 3 buckets, as you see there: transforming teaching and learning, transforming the secondary school experience, and transforming business and civic organization. And this was all driven by the workforce needs in our community. Next slide. As part of our strategic plan, we have 3 focus areas, and that is to improve student achievement, to increase school and community partnerships, and to recruit and retain high-performing staff. And out of each of those, there are initiatives and priorities that are aligned with those 3 focus areas. Next slide. So I want to highlight some of our noteworthy achievement. In the state of Georgia, we give the Georgia milestones. That is the high stakes test for the state of Georgia. And this past year was the first year that they reinstated the report card for each school district and each school. So I wanted to share with you that based on the end of grade assessment that is given in the spring, our performance did increase in ELA and math for 3rd, 4th, and 6th grade. The other grade levels did not show the kind of progress that we would have expected. Also, we made significant increases in reading performance at grades 3, 4, 6, 7th, and 8th. Grade 5, for some reason, did not make the kind of progress that we thought we would make. But even with making the progress that we've made, we still are not where we need to be. Also, we increased our literacy scores by over 15 points when you look at the scores across our district, and that is higher than where we were pre-pandemic. So we're very pleased with our increase in our literacy scores, but again, we're not where we need to be. We still have work to do. And then our report card, which is CCRPI, readiness score increased by 13 points. Next slide. You can also see that there were a number of areas that we increased. I want to highlight bullet number 2, because our primary schools, when it comes to closing the gap, that is looking at the performance of your special ed students, your English language learners, looking at also your ethnic groups and your subgroups. Our primary schools got 100 points out of 100 points. So they have done a really great job of closing that achievement gap and really getting kids to where they need to be when they move on to 3rd grade. You can also see our math scores have also increased. And then our high school has really made a lot of progress as well when it comes to closing the achievement gap. They had a score of 78.6 percentage points out of 100 points. So we're making progress, but we know that we still have a lot of work to do. Next slide. And so we know that we have to improve in certain areas. And the 3 areas that we are focusing on that we know we need to make significant improvement is the percentage of kids reading at grade level. And we're focusing on grades K through 8, with a strong focus on K2, because we know that if we get those strong foundational reading skills in K2, that then the students will have more success as they progress from grades 3 through 8. We also are focusing on increasing the proficiency level on the state assessment for ELA in math and science for both the elementary, middle, and high school. And then finally, we want to reduce the number of kids that score at the beginning level, which means they are below grade level in English language arts on the state assessment, which is the end of grade and end of course. Next slide. So what are we doing to ensure that our kids are achieving at high levels and that we close those gaps that came about as a result of the pandemic? Next slide. So one of the things that we believe is that in order for kids to be ready to learn, you got to remove non-academic barriers and you have to close the opportunity gap. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of things here. One of the things that we know that our kids in our community need is quality health care. So prior to the pandemic, we received a federal grant of $2.4 million, and we have opened a school-based health clinic in our district, which is on a sliding scale. So our families and our students and our employees are able to take advantage of our school-based health clinic, and it's on a sliding scale. So if you don't have health insurance or you can't afford to pay for your visit, we still will see you. And we also have a pharmacy there that will provide medication. We also know that a barrier for our kids is that if our kids don't have clean clothes, they do not come to school because they don't want to be embarrassed and they don't want kids to make fun of them. So we opened a parent laundry learning center in our school district. So our families can come and wash their clothes for free. We got funding from local businesses to buy commercial washer and dryers, and our local churches provide the detergent. The only thing we ask parents is that in order as a trade-off of being able to wash their clothes for free, we ask them to either volunteer in the schools or participate in workshops that would help them to better support their children at home. And we also have a clothing closet to provide uniforms to our kids. Not only do we provide our kids breakfast and lunch, but we also provide dinner. We have children that the only 2 meals they get are the meals that they get in our schools. So we added a dinner program. So any student that stays after school gets to have dinner and they don't have to worry about going hungry. All of these factors impact student learning. So I can have the greatest teachers in the classrooms, but if kids are worrying about where their next meal is coming from, if kids are worrying about, how do I get better because I have a cold or the flu, it doesn't matter. They're not going to learn. So we've been able to do that. We've also provided our kids with a computer. So every single one of our kids has a digital device. And we also have families that do not have access to the internet. So we remove that barrier by providing them with hotspots. And we also have an evening school for students that need a different option than the traditional high school. Next slide. So here's some of the things that we've done to address that huge achievement gap that we have seen during the pandemic. We're focusing on standards-based instruction. We developed a district-wide literacy framework, and we also developed our own units of study, making sure that we have high-quality instructional materials. And then to address the issue of our kids reading at grade level, we started a literacy academy after school for students in grades 2 through 6. I personally wrote a letter to each of these parents to let them know that their children were not at grade level and that it would be beneficial for them to come to this literacy academy after school. So twice a week for 90 minutes, we hired the best teachers to give intensive literacy instruction to these students. And so we are waiting for the data to see the kind of impact that it's had on our kids. We also partner with United Way and Communities in School to offer a reunited tutorial program so students K through 2 during the school day. So we train our tutors with very explicit instructional strategies when it comes to reading, and they either work with students one-on-one or in small group. We also have initiated a community-wide initiative to put books in the hands of preschool and pre-K students. So we have funding through a grant. We are able to provide a book to every child age 3 through 5 with activities for the parents to do with them at home. And they will get that book every month, including their siblings that are not in school, until they reach the age of 5. And that is done through a funding. So again, really focusing on how do we create a community-wide focus on literacy to ensure that all of our kids are reading at grade level. And then you see some of the other initiatives that are there. We, of course, have focused on Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. Once we've done that high-quality Tier 1 instruction, we have now trained our teachers in Wilson Reading and Orton Gillingham to deliver Tier 2 and Tier 3 support. And we just did that training this year. So again, we're looking to see what our data shows and whether those initiative and intensive approaches to addressing achievement gaps have really made a difference. And then we also are training, we train 200 teachers on letters, which is focusing on the science of reading. Next slide. And then I wanted to mention to you that we are a charter system. And so people ask, what is a charter system? So if you go to the next slide, I gave a very long definition, but basically a charter system is a school district that operates under a performance-based contract between the State Board of Education and our local school board. And what the charter says is that for 5 years, you sign a contract for 5 years, and that contract is going to give you broad flexibility from all state education laws and regulations in order to allow you to be innovative and increase student achievement. So we have been a charter system now for 7 years. We renewed our contract 2 years ago, and we have been able to implement some very innovative programming. One of those initiatives is a Montessori program. We have one of 5 public Montessori programs in the state of Georgia. We have the only Montessori program that has Head Start students in the state of Georgia. So most of the time you find Montessori in a private setting, not in a public school setting. Next slide. We also have done, as part of our charter, we transform our high school into a wall-to-wall college and career academy. So this shows you all of the pathways that we offer in that college and career academy. So every high school student must declare a pathway when they get to 10th grade. Every high school student must finish a pathway. These pathways were identified based on the needs of our community and also the needs of the workforce needs of our state. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Price. You'll see as you get to read the comments and questions, so many great, so much praise for what you're doing and great questions that we hope to dig into later. That was excellent. And I think one of the takeaways, especially on the slide of supports you have is, and you mentioned this, is that, you know, essential to tackling achievement gaps is removing the non-academic barriers that you spoke of and closing the opportunity gaps. And so that was a really great, just, you know, you're showing how that's possible. So thank you so much. We have 4 other speakers that we want to get to, and then we'll go to Q&A. So I'm going to ask each speaker to be as brief as possible so we can get to that Q&A. And for our audience, please continue to put questions in the Q&A box. So we're now going to go to Dr. Watlington in Philadelphia, and we're going to hear from Dr. Watlington, who's the superintendent, and then from his colleague Jenny Bogoni, who's also in Philadelphia with Read by Fourth, and learn a little bit about what they're doing. So Dr. Watlington, thank you so much again for returning and joining us.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, and we'll jump right in, and I can knock this out in about 10 minutes, I believe. Pleased to come back and share something about some thoughts about what's working to narrow academic achievement gaps, or as Dr. Price put it, opportunity gaps is probably a more apt way to describe that phenomenon, and we'll do that expeditiously. Next slide, please. I'll just give you an overview of the school district and my charge as superintendent. We'll talk a bit about what outcomes are we achieving and how are we doing it. Next slide. Quick overview of the school district on the next slide. As you may or may not know, the School District of Philadelphia is the 8th largest school district in the United States, with just under 200,000 students, and the traditional public schools to include the public charter schools as well, a total of 331 schools. It's a majority Black and brown school district, with African Americans making up just shy of 51% of the population, and Hispanic and Latino students make up 24% of the district. It's our fastest growing demographic in the district. You can see the other demographic breakdowns there. Very diverse city with nearly 170 languages spoken. Next slide, please. So our charge here is to really get better faster. Our Board of Education has set up a governance-focused systems focused on its goals and guardrails. If your district is a member of the Council for Great City Schools, it's not a term that's foreign to you. Really pleased that my Board of Education focuses the lion's share of its time on student achievement and its goals, academic goals. And we've set an expectation that we'll become the fastest improving large urban school district in the country, as measured by NAEP performance, graduation rates, and dropout rates. Next slide. What outcomes are we achieving? Certainly, one of the things that was noted in January in the Education Recovery Scorecard by the Harvard and Stanford University professors, when they looked at the NAEP tutor districts, and this map shows you all the NAEP tutor districts across the country, there are 26. Earlier this year, when the researchers at Harvard University and Harvard and Stanford universities researched how our students are doing with regard to rebound performance in 3rd through 8th grade reading and math, the School District of Philadelphia had some good news there. On the next slide, when you look at these districts, we found that among the districts that were included in the study, which accounted for what I believe 30 states and 60% of the U.S. public school population, the School District of Philadelphia had the best, fastest, or the strongest rebound performance in 3rd through 8th grade math among the NAEP tutor districts. Again, to be in the study, the districts had to have tested 95% of their students, and they had to have not changed their state tests between 2019 and 2023. You can see Philadelphia in that first place, followed by Los Angeles and Guilford counties, North Carolina, place where I worked once upon a time as well. Next slide. On the reading side, 3rd through 8th grade reading, relative to the NAEP tutor districts that were included in the study. Of course, the Chicago Public Schools had the best rebound performance, followed by the School District of Philadelphia, and then San Diego. Was pleased that not only did those two districts make the best progress among NAEP districts, we actually got a bit better than we were before the pandemic. Next slide. Now, how do we plan to accelerate? How are we accelerating academic achievement? Next slide. At the 10,000 foot level, we have 5 levers. This is at the 10,000 foot level. Number one, we focus very heavily on developing highly qualified, well-supported, stable teachers over time. I named that because it's the single most important factor in determining and informing whether kids grow academically. It's a challenge in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania because the number of graduates receiving teacher certifications in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania has declined by 71% over the past 8 years. And so that puts an extra onus responsibility on the school district to fill those gaps for an increasing number of emergency or alternately licensed teachers. Second, we're investing in highly qualified, well-qualified and stable principals because the research tells us they're number 2 in the research. We've launched high quality curriculum in all of our schools. This year, we launched green rated, according to Ed Reports, green rated curriculum, K-12 in math, illustrative math. Some of our highest performing schools in the district were already using that math curriculum. We're often referred to as the largest poor city in the country. And so when our kids move across different schools because of a transient nature, couch surfing, et cetera, we're pleased that all of our kids will get best in class math curriculum, and we'll be launching new curricula in English language arts next year and science the following year. We're at the 10,000 foot, knee-deep focused on rigorous core instruction. Dr. Battle talked at length about that, so I won't repeat that. That's our North Star. We don't think we can tutor and mentor our way to excellence. And then certainly we are working to engage with our parents, guardians, and caregivers as they are our children's first teachers. On the next slide, I want to talk a little bit, share a little bit about more specific granular strategies, and I'll do this fairly quickly. Next slide. Number one focus is rigorous grade level core instruction. We routinely audit when we do school visits the amount of time that our students spend every day in doing grade level appropriate work, engaging with grade level appropriate texts and the like, and focusing on that tier 1 piece that my colleagues have talked about. We're implementing high quality curriculum and instructional support resources across the district. As I shared, illustrative math was launched this school year. We are focusing heavily on the science of reading, and we've procured K-12 curriculum to launch across the district next year, and it'll be standardized across all schools. And then the following year, we will launch a to-be-determined science curriculum. We're still studying the Ed Reports data, but we are going to get the science curriculum purchased before September when our ARPA dollars go away. We're also offering intensive professional learning and instructional coaching. Again, we have a 71% decline in certificated teachers coming out of our colleges and universities in Pennsylvania. Now, because of our geography being very close to the state of New Jersey and Delaware, we're also focusing on going out to recruit high quality, well-supported teachers in other places as well. We're also looking at schools as the unit of change. And instead of trying to help teachers improve one by one, we want to address this deprivatization issue of practice and put together strong instructional leadership teams. We've launched those in every school in the district. We also have made a significant investment in pre-K locations across Philadelphia. You may be familiar that a former mayor implemented a soda tax that helped to expand the reach of pre-K education here in the city of Philadelphia. We're also partnering with community organizations like Read by Fourth, and Jenny Begoni is here, and she'll be able to talk more about that. Not only have they distributed millions of books to families citywide since 2016, but they're really helping us to explain what does science of reading really mean to our parents and community partners. One of the best things I've seen since I've been here in 2 years is we were all at the Fillmore Theater one night, and it was so great to see all these parents and community members, educators, et cetera, learning. We were watching a film and about the science of reading and the shift from balanced literacy and why we're in the space where we are. And parents and community members were really able to understand how they fit in that process. And so those community partnerships are really important. And I'm so glad that Jenny Bogoni is here with us from Read by Fourth tonight, this afternoon rather. Next slide. With that, I'll say thank you. Happy to take any questions or receive any feedback, and I'll look forward to Jenny Bogoni giving us additional context about that community partnership. It's one of several. We also have a fund for the School District of Philadelphia that helps us raise funding, bring all of the philanthropic community together, and they are seeking to raise some $40 million for us as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Watlington. That was excellent. And just hearing not only your in-district strategies, but your partnerships, and partnerships is certainly a key. And we'll hear that from Jenny and then Birmingham as well. So Jenny, I'll give it over to you, and please continue to put the key questions in the chat. We'll get to it after everyone's presented. So thank you.
Sure, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Watlington, and all of the superintendents on this webinar today. As an outside partner who has worked for decades supporting school district success, I'm always just energized and inspired by the incredible work you superintendents do every day. So thank you. So Read by Fourth is not one organization. We are a citywide coalition of partners. And really, we are Philadelphia's campaign to protect every child's right to read. We sometimes call ourselves Philadelphia's early literacy movement. If you could go to the next slide, please. We have more than 120 partners, the school district being one of our partners, who are focused on protecting every child's right to read. And really our theory of change focuses on this graphic that says that collectively we need to empower families, we need to ensure our communities are literacy rich, and we need to make sure our systems are just and are resourced in the ways we need them to be resourced. And to ensure those things happen, we have this outer ring that we talk about, the ring that powers the movement, where we work to build partnerships and convene partners across multiple sectors. We build the capacity of the early learning ecosystem, such as making sure our partners and our families understand what the science of reading really is. We develop shared asset-based family resource tools that support families in raising readers. We are transforming the physical environment to ensure learning happens everywhere, every day. And we're really pushing for equitable policy change. And I'm going to give you a few examples of each of those things if you go to the next slide. One of my favorite recent projects is our Philly ABCs. You can go to phillyabcs.org to see this in action. But a few years ago, we created an alphabet poster that's Philadelphia specific. For those of you who know Philadelphia, it's things like P is for pretzel and R is for Rocky. But on our website, families can click on a letter and they can hear an educator do the specific phonemic pronunciation of that letter. And we are really pushing to make sure families understand that a child entering kindergarten needs to not just be able to sing the alphabet song, but actually needs to know their letter names, shapes, and sounds. And so we have a number of resources that speak to that. And last year, working with the district and setting a goal to make sure that entering kindergartners had that alphabet knowledge skill, had increased that alphabet knowledge skill, we transformed 14 rec centers in North Philadelphia for the summer with these graphics. We also did a direct mail campaign to families in that area that had rising kindergartners with tips of things they could do at home. This year, we're expanding that project to 2 additional neighborhoods because it gained so much positive feedback from families. We also had family resource tote bags at health centers. So families that came in with 3- and 4-year-olds, they were able to walk out with a tote bag that supported alphabet knowledge games at home. Next slide, please. There's a picture of our poster with one of Philadelphia's most famous teachers, if you watch Albert Elementary School. So if you'd like one of those posters, let me know. I'm happy to share these with folks. Next slide. We're also, as Dr. Watlington mentioned, making sure families have access to diverse books, not just any books, but diverse books. We've really been working over the last couple of years to look at where our partners disperse books And we noticed that we were actually collectively giving away nearly 1 million books a year across the city of Philadelphia. If you look at the census, there's only about 200,000 children, 0 to 9. So we ought to have been able to get 5 books to every child, which was not what was happening. More books were going to some neighborhoods than others, and the books that were being given out were sometimes duplicates and not always of diverse and culturally relevant stories. So we've really worked with a number of partners to look at ways to help our partner organizations connect to resources that will allow them to buy more diverse titles. We've worked with partners to develop an audit sheet for how they can look at the books that they use in their own programs to make sure that they are culturally relevant. And we've really made a commitment to purchase books from local Black-owned bookstores. And we've seen a dramatic increase in access to diverse books through this work. Next slide. We've also co-created a number of free resources for educators and for families. We have a literacy toolkit that families can use to do basic foundational literacy skill games at home with guide to how to do that. We have resources for teachers aligned to the science of reading. All of these things can be found on our website, and these were co-created with staff from the school district to make sure that what we are putting out there aligns with what they're telling their teachers in-house as well. Next slide. We have been working for years also to think about the teacher pipeline. What we really wanted to do 9 years ago is make sure that when teachers hit the classroom for the first time, they were already conversant in the science of reading and school districts wouldn't have to retrain them. So we've been working with the local universities to prepare the vast majority of our teachers for the classroom to make sure that their education programs are accredited in something called the Knowledge and Practice Standards of Teaching Reading. And we are happy to report that we now have 12 such programs in the state of, or not just in the state of Pennsylvania, but actually in this region around Philadelphia. And we have the most programs accredited to this way of preparing teachers of any region in the country, which really hopefully makes Dr. Watlington's job in the future much easier. Next slide. We also have worked with the district to train their family engagement liaisons on that early learning workshop that I was mentioning before. So what this does is a train the trainers model, where we go in and we train their family engagement liaisons on how to use this training with families for things like literacy nights in neighborhood schools. And this has been a great way to really scale the access to this training for families. Next slide. And last but not least, we have what I like to think of as perhaps the largest and most diverse core of early literacy advocates in the country. We have, over the last couple of years, oriented and trained more than 1,000 reading captains. Our vision is to have a reading captain on every block of the city, and the job of a reading captain as a volunteer is to be grounded in the basics of what it takes to raise a reader and to be able to turn around and share that information with their friends and neighbors. Things like how to get your library card, why reading with your child every night is important, what it means to know your alphabet skills, how to talk to your student's teacher about your student's reading level and what questions to ask. So we arm these reading captains with all that information, and we hope in doing so, families every day in their own neighborhood are talking to someone they trust and getting their questions about early literacy answered. I think those are my slides.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was wonderful. And I know Dr. Watlington is thrilled to have you as a partner and vice versa. And I'm really excited to go next as we tee up Dr. Sullivan's slides. I just want to underscore what many of you have talked about, the importance of partnerships. So from something as specific as Dr. Price mentioned, the churches providing detergent for laundry, to what Jenny just mentioned around supporting universities to train teacher candidates in the science of reading. All of those partnerships are there and support closing achievement gaps. So thank you so much for highlighting all those things. So if we can pull up Dr. Sullivan's slides now, and Dr. Sullivan, thank you so much for your patience. We're really excited to hear from you, and then from your colleague Dontrell as well. So I'll give it over to you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for giving me an opportunity to share the partnership that we have with the Birmingham Housing Authority. One of the things that we know is that students are with us in the school from kindergarten to 12th grade for 20% of their time. 80% of that time is taken outside of the school district. And so what we have to do is we need to really maximize that out of school time to support what happens in schools. And I think that having the partnership with the Birmingham Housing Authority has really helped galvanize our community and also help galvanize particularly the students who live in public housing. Next slide. So we have 9 board members in Birmingham City Schools. They're all elected by districts. They are the ones who really ensure that, you know, we are doing the right things to ensure that our students have the resources they need in order to be successful. They are advocates, not just for their districts, but advocates for the school district as a whole. And we could not move the work that we move without the support of our school board. Next slide. So Birmingham City Schools at a glance, we have 44 schools. That includes 1 virtual school. What we found post-pandemic was that most students do not learn well in virtual environments. However, there are some students who actually thrive in that environment. So coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that we did was to open up a virtual school, and it also includes an alternative school that supports our 20,000 students and 2,700 employees. Next slide. So a little bit about the Housing Authority. Early on, in Birmingham, we've always had a strong partnership with the Housing Authority because such a large percentage of our students live in public housing. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we wanted to go to a virtual environment, one of the things that we found out really quickly was that the majority of our students had some form of device, but we found out that 25% of our students either did not have devices at home or did not have internet fast enough to run the programs that we had. So the first round of ESSA funds that we received, we began to buy devices. At the same time, the Housing Authority began to support us by providing devices for the students in the Housing Authority, even before we began to purchase those devices using our ESSA funds. But we recognized that the digital divide was not only not the only divide that our students experienced. We also had a hunger divide. There was a food divide. As said earlier, many of our students relied on the meals that they received at school as part of their 3 basic meals per day. And so during the pandemic, even though our schools were closed, we continued to feed students, and our bus drivers would go into the public housing communities with the Housing Authority, and we set up stations in those areas so that we could provide meals for our students. And once the vaccine became available, we partnered with the Housing Authority because there was a lot of reluctance around getting vaccinated. And so we did a partnership with the Housing Authority to provide education to our parents, to their parents, to grandparents who live in public housing about what the vaccine was and what the vaccine was not. We did a survey, and we determined that 60% of our parents said that they were not going to get the vaccine, nor would they provide the vaccine to their children. And when we start digging into the data, determining some of the reasons why, a lot of it was not knowing a lot about the virus. A lot of it was about mistrusting, the government in some other areas. And so we really had to do a real concentrated campaign in order to ensure that our students were safe when they came back to school. And then we partner with the Housing Authority around reading initiatives by providing books and really pushing into the community to really address learning loss. And then one of the areas that was mentioned earlier is chronic absenteeism. And so we had last year around 25% of our students were chronically absent, meaning that they missed 10% or more of the school year, which is about 18 days. And oftentimes parents don't realize how quickly 18 days can accumulate. You can only miss 2 days a month. And if you miss that over a 9-month period, which is school time, then you've already at your chronic absenteeism level. And so we partner with the Housing Authority, and part of that, and Danielle's going to talk about, Dontrell's going to talk about that a little bit later, is providing incentives for students who live in public housing in order to incentivize them to really make a school a priority post-pandemic. Next slide. So just a little bit of demographics around our school district. We have 85% of our students are African American. We have around 12% of our students, almost 13% of our students are Latino. We have about 9% of our students they are ESL, and then we have 87% of our students are identified by the federal government as students who live in poverty. Next slide. So we had a lot of challenges post-pandemic. During the pandemic, our school district went virtual for most of the 2021 school year. And part of the reason for that is in Alabama, the decision was left up to the local superintendent to determine whether schools would stay open or not. Now, we have 14 different school systems in our county alone, and there were 14 different ways of providing instruction. And so we recognized the demographic of students and parents that we work with who were really disproportionately affected by the pandemic, either through deaths in their family or being considered as essential workers. Even within our school district, we lost 8 staff members during the pandemic. We lost a student during the pandemic, and we had, of those 8, 2 of those staff members, they were in the same school and they died within the same week of each other. And so coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that we recognized is that we had to do a lot to mitigate learning loss. And when we got our first set of data, we recognized that, hey, our students were not performing. And I initially thought that reading would be the area in which we would fall behind, but it was really math. Our math scores were dismal. And so one of the things that we wanted to put in place to address that was a year-round school, because I said, kids have been out of school for most of the year. We need to get students back in school right away. And so I brought that brilliant idea to the community, and they said no. I went to the parents, and they said no. I went to the school board at the time, and we didn't have the 5 votes necessary. Then we went to the employees. The employees said no. And then finally, the students said HELL no. They did not want to go to school year-round. But what we did was we compromised. And so we started school at the beginning of August. Students attended school for 9 weeks, and then they were off a week. Now, you would think that if students are off a week, they would not be engaged in anything involving academics. But what we did was we called that week that they were off an intercession, where we provided remediation, we provided enrichment, we provided coding, we provided dance, music. And so our students, every student had an opportunity to attend kindergarten through 12th grade. We provided lunch, breakfast and lunch, after school care for our students who were in elementary school, free transportation. And so the first time we did it, and we did it 4 times a year, and our goal was to take that 180-day calendar that we have in Alabama and push that to closer to over 200 days of instruction if students took part in our intercessions. And what we found was that if the first time we did it, we had 1,800 students. And I thought, man, we invested so much, and we have only 1,800 out of 20,000. By the time we did our intercession in the spring, we had 5,000 students. That's about 1/4 of our population in intercession. We had nearly 10,000 in the summer intercession. And the one that we had at the beginning of this year, we had nearly 7,000 students in school during a week when they didn't have to be. And we have just gotten our data back, and I'm going to share it with our school board at our next work session. But it shows that the students who participated in intercession outperformed the students who didn't. And there's one grade level we have, I think it's 6th grade or 7th grade, where students who did not attend intercession, they start the year achieving higher than the students who did. And by the end of the year, the students who attended intercession had greatly surpassed the students who had not attended intercession. And so we want to get that data publicized and just show how we're trying to accelerate learning loss. And I think it was mentioned earlier, you have to ensure that your students and your employees have the mental help or support, the wraparound services in order to be successful. And so we invested very heavily in SEL, which is our student support division. We've also invested very heavily in providing our teachers, our employees, with the supports they need, because the pandemic, as I indicated, was very difficult for a lot of parents, a lot of students, and a lot of employees. And we wanted to make sure that we provided the supports for our students and our employees as we move forward. Next slide. And so what we saw an increase in our reading. We saw an increase in math. And before the pandemic, the majority of our students, schools were D or an F school. We have turned that around. We've increased the number of A's and B's. I think it's about 23% from the initial start of the 8th through F report card in the state of Alabama. And as I indicated, our reading outperformed our math, and I think Tony mentioned this earlier, the state of Alabama changed its reading assessment from the 2019, so that didn't show up in the data from the recent research, but our math scores, the math test was the same test, and we saw an increase in our math as well. In fact, we actually are outperforming where we were before the pandemic in math. We had completely made up the deficits in math, and that was one of the areas that we were most concerned about. Next slide. And so, as mentioned, we had an article, there was an article in the New York Times which highlighted the work that's happening in Birmingham, particularly the work that we're doing in mathematics and how we have almost completely recovered in math and reading, but we have definitely recovered in reading as opposed to where we were prior to the pandemic. And I think with partnerships like we have with the Housing Authority and other entities that we have in the local area, because Birmingham is very rich in having a lot of nonprofits who are willing to support education, and the Housing Authority is one of those nonprofits. And so I know that Mrs. Foster is here. Ms. Foster, if you want to chime in, and I think this is our last slide.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank you.
Sullivan. Yes, Ms. Foster, please go ahead, and we have a one-pager to go along with your remarks too. I'm excited to hear about this great partnership.
Yes, thank you. So as we begin to display my slide, I would like to share this opportunity to say I'm privileged to be on this panel today as we learn more about work being done to close this achievement gaps post-pandemic. So just to provide a little information about the Housing Authority of the Birmingham District, we are the largest in the state of Alabama, which makes us the 17th largest in the nation. We serve approximately 23 low-income families within our public housing and Section 8 programs. Within our portfolio, we have 14 communities. In these 14 communities, we serve 8,000 school-age children, which is very imperative because that is the reason why it's so important and critical that we have a partnership with the Birmingham City Schools. And so HABD properties are scattered across the city of Birmingham, and our youth attends all 44 schools mentioned in Dr. Sullivan's presentation. Our mission is to provide quality, affordable housing and provide a catalyst for opportunities. But when we say a catalyst for opportunity, it starts with our youth. Through various partnerships, we collaborated to create programs and initiatives to support not only the youth, but our parents and guardians that are in those households. On this slide, it shares a few barriers that the youth encounters, but that's just a small list of what take place within our communities. You know, there are barriers that we take for granted that we're not aware that our kids take to school with them, and our families and our household, you know, lose that focus of getting their kids to school because of these barriers. So we have a community engagement team that works closely with the Birmingham City School staff. And when I say the Birmingham City School staff, I just don't mean the teachers. I mean, we're engaged with the principals, the counselors, and an administrative team. And of course, our very own Dr. Sullivan that's stayed engaged with how we need to move forward in innovative ways and how we can combat some of the challenges that our youth deal with. We work together to be trained on various educational platforms to facilitate everyday classwork, as testing and monitoring of those student progresses. Our training doesn't stop with the students, but also with our parents and guardians. And what we do is we utilize the time to assist them with how to use that parent portal, because it's so important that we ensure our parents to stay involved and also to learn how to track their attendance and academics and see their progress within their students. There are multiple programs and initiatives that we have in place that are listed on this slide. Due to time, I'm not gonna go through all of them, but I want to share that, you know, we have an on-site center. It's a one-stop shop. It's called the Campus of Hope. And this Campus of Hope, it serves many of our youth and the parents to ensure that they're utilizing the space to operate even from dropout recovery services to homework assistance to our youth and parent literacy. And the dropout recovery, again, I state as a one-stop shop. It allows us to move our youth when they're going to dropout recovery. We have at this site also partnerships with our college community that utilize those times to either move our youth to the next level of education, which is very important. This space also, as mentioned, Dr. Sullivan stated that in the past, This was a space where we used it for our virtual learning. And so today there's e-learning that takes place within our communities. And though some of our youth attend this Campus of Hope to utilize our community center to ensure that they're using our computers and our printers to ensure that they get the work done and need to be successful in their education. And another initiative that we have is a summer intern program, and it is funded through the Department of Human Resources. And what this do is provide our youth, not only during the school system, but during the summer times, to keep them engaged and ensuring them the importance of their education. And so what this does is allow them to have career opportunities and experiences, not only with the Housing Authority of Birmingham, but the Birmingham City Schools and other agencies such as City of Birmingham, United Way, WYCA, just to name a few. So there are several initiatives that we are collaborating with to make ourselves present to the children and parents to build trust and comfort. And there is one other initiative that I want to share, and that's our most recent initiative, and it's called Everyday Counts. Everyday Counts is an initiative to improve our daily attendance. Throughout these presentations that we had today, we spoke a lot about chronic absenteeism. And so it's very critical and it's nationwide. And so when we have these partnerships, we come to the table and we be innovative about our thoughts. And so what this did was to allow not only the Birmingham City Schools, but the City of Birmingham to come together and be collaborative to identify how can we combat this daily attendance in our Birmingham school system. In order for a household to qualify in this initiative, they have to have perfect attendance for the month. Our goal is to support the children's education outcomes and personal development by encouraging consistent school attendance. And we received this data from the Birmingham City Schools. And once we receive this data, we confirm that they're in our public housing program. And so we do is they're enter into a monthly drawing and receive an incentive towards their household needs, whether it's paying rent or need the utilities, grocery, whatever household needs that can combat the barrier that they're dealing with. This incentive can work towards that. And not only did this incentive allow an increase in where our students are as it relates to not attending school, but increase our numbers when we come to homework help. It increased our numbers in our parent literacy programs. If we move the slide up just a little, it'll show where, I'm sorry, down. My apologies, the other way, thank you. The Everyday Counts initiative was created in this year in January. So what we did was when we kicked off this initiative, we didn't share that we was going to do a drawing. So unfortunately, we did the drawing. We only had 3 households that was eligible to receive this incentive. And so as you see the numbers at the bottom of this sheet, those numbers increase. And so the numbers share that, we're moving forward and what we're doing is very successful within our communities. And, and the importance of, I think it was mentioned earlier about data sharing, because it's critical to see where these numbers are going so we can know how we can improve some of the services that we're providing to our communities. So I think it's very imperative that we have partnerships within the communities. I'm very passionate to see so many diverse agencies that are in the chat today because these partnerships are needed. And so in the City of Birmingham, what we do, we as Dr. Sullivan indicated, that we have a strong, rich nonprofit community that wants to support and provide services within our community and within the education of our youth. And so I say that the support of the City of Birmingham, our mayor, city council, county commissioners, all our 101 partners that we stated that we have in these local partnerships, it is so imperative you have that support. And we have a mayor that not only supports, but he promotes all the different initiatives that we have. He promotes that on almost a daily basis because if you continuously hear the importance of the needs of our residents, you will continue to have engagement. People come aboard to share because this Everyday Counts initiative, we receive funding from partners and individuals that can read into this and say it's making a difference in our youth lives and our parents. So we're very grateful to the partnerships that we have and built with the Birmingham City School.
Ms. Foster, thank you so much. That was incredible. And I was just, as I was listening, I was thinking, what an amazing partnership with you and the school system and the city. And what if every community, the district and the housing authority and other partners could partner that strongly how much progress we could make, you know, and closing achievement gaps and giving every student that opportunity. And I just want to highlight a few themes I heard, and then in the remaining couple minutes, invite each of you to share 30 seconds of just like a final thought for the audience. We do have a poll up there, so go ahead and vote or complete the poll as you're listening to the final thoughts. So a few quick takeaways. I really heard from each of you this you know, collective responsibility of not just the school district, but of everyone in the community, and engaging partners to, you know, be part of that, and this collective advocacy of children, that it's everyone's work in the community, which is, I think, is essential, as you've all said, to tackling achievement gaps. Another thing is removing non-academic barriers, which can't be done by the school district alone, has to be done with community partners, and a focus on tier 1 rigorous instruction, replacing, you know, the remedial kind of that mindset that, you know, 2 different kinds of instructional expectations for different kinds of students. So I just want to invite each of you to share just one quick final thought or takeaway as we close out. Dr. Sullivan, why don't you go first?
Thank you. I think one of the things that a final thought is that, you know, we can't do this work alone, as you indicated, and that we still have a long way to go to make up from the COVID pandemic. We were behind academically. There were opportunity gaps. I really like that, Tony. That's a really good term. Opportunity gaps that students had prior to the pandemic. Those gaps have only widened, and I think that, you know, we have to keep this work moving forward. And I think that people around you know, this table, people around this call are committed to making sure that that work continues. So we have done a lot of things. We've seen a lot of progress, but we have a long way to go.
Dr. Price, and then Dr. Watlington, and anyone else?
I want to say the same thing. Was just taken aback by the incredible work going on by at each of the school districts and what the panelists have shared. My takeaway, and everybody has said that, is a collaborative effort, that we have to continue to partner and collaborate with nonprofit organizations, businesses, our families, and organizations that are willing to help us to do this work in order to get our students in a better place. And we too in Baldwin County, we've made progress, but we have a long way to go. And I am so thankful to have the partnerships that I have in my community. And I'm so thankful to all the wonderful information shared today, because I'm taking away some ideas that I can now use here in my own community. So thank you for the opportunity.
I too want to thank you for this opportunity to bring your greetings from the city of brotherly love and sisterly affection here in Philadelphia. Three quick just ahas. First, again, I think Dr. Battle was spot on with this notion of let's focus on core instruction first, and kids must have access to grade level instruction. And there are ways that we can support our teachers in doing that. I also think that means that we've got to figure out how to rebuild this teacher pipeline problem. A 50% decline in people graduating from our public and private colleges and universities. We didn't talk a lot about that today, but that's really important. And we're making progress, but we've got a long way to go, and we've got to rebuild that pipeline. We need a Marshall Plan, just like rebuilt Western Europe after the Second World War. I want to note that Dr. Price talked about how she was paying close attention to kids who perform at what she calls the beginning learning level. Very pleased to hear that we're all trying to get better, not by just focusing on the bubble kids who are 1 or 2 points away from a proficient test score, get them over the hump and say, hey, our test scores improved. I think we're all not only improving the kids in the middle, trying to raise the roof, the top kids, but we're paying very close attention to the kids who perform at the very bottom. Dr. Price in Philadelphia, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that's called below basic. We had improvements in every area except for Algebra 1. No, every area except for Algebra 1 with regard to the number of kids who perform at the below basic level here in Philadelphia. And then finally, I was real pleased to hear about the year-round learning extended year piece, Dr. Sullivan, and how you were very strategic in bringing your community along and navigating the middle. Stay tuned. We're implementing some pilots in partnership with Mayor Sherelle Parker here in Philadelphia. So we're going to be calling on you, sir.
And if I could just add for a quick second, I want to just encourage us to keep our eye on the ball for the long term too. It's very easy to move on to the next shiny thing, and these changes take time. And I am so impressed with what each of these districts has put in place. We now as communities need to support them in sticking with it for multiple years and not just change when leadership changes.
Dontrell, final word?
I would say, again, with everyone else stated, collaboration, network, think innovative, use your local organizations for partnerships, because it's critical to, having, they always say it takes a village. It definitely takes a village, and the numbers don't lie. So if we see where we need to provide support and engagement in those areas, let's use our partners to do so.
Thank you so much. I just commend each of you for everything you're doing on behalf of your children and communities and with them. And let's just throw up that slide real quick of upcoming webinars before we say goodbye. Please join us for these upcoming webinars. More information is on our website. Lots of great other information to come. And this will not be the end of our discussion of focusing on achievement gaps, opportunity and access gaps. These great speakers and leaders have given us a lot to think about and dive deeper into. So we'll be digging deeper into that more in future webinars and conversations. So thank you all so much, especially to our guests, and have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.